Hello, my name is Miss Ng. I'm from the Shaler North Hills Library. I am trying to record this. I'm having a hard time with it because I'm having a hard time pronouncing the author's first name, but I've looked it up and it's the opposite of the actress or musician whose name is spelled the same way. That person, she pronounces her name Demi, and this woman, who is the author of this and many other books, is Demi. Demi. Yeah, so this is called The Hungry Coat. It's a tale from Turkey. If I've ever been to your school, you may have heard me read it to you because it's one of my most favorites. It's awesome. And this guy who's in it, Nasrettin Hoca, he is in a lot of different Turkish tales, and he is a wise figure, and you'll find out why. Once upon a time in Turkey, there lived a funny little wise man named Nasrettin Hoca. He wore a huge white turban and a worn-out coat made of patches upon patches. Riding about on his little gray donkey, he liked to help whomever he could. And these illustrations are really nice, too. One day, Nasrettin Hoca heard a great commotion inside a caravanserai hosted for travelers. A frisky goat had gotten loose inside the kitchen. Kicking and prancing, she was breaking all the dishes, knocking over pots and pans and spilling all the cooking oil. The cook was screaming, and a few travelers were slipping in the oil as they tried to catch the goat. You can see it is just ridiculous. It is mayhem because the goat is there. Craziness. Because he really loved goats so much, Nasrettin always carried a sweet apple in his pocket for them. He quickly took out the apple and cut it, into tiny pieces. He lined up the pieces, so as the little goat nibbled to the last piece, Nasrettin was able to catch her. Gently, Nasrettin put the little goat back into her pen, and everyone cheered. The owner invited Nasrettin to eat with the other travelers, but Nasrettin declined, as he was on his way to a banquet at the home of a rich friend. So you can see there, see what he did with the apple? He lined up the pieces of apple so the goat was like, I'm coming closer, I'm coming closer. And then he was able to take the goat and put her in safety. And the travelers, too. Nasrettin trotted off, waving to all and happy to have helped. He was so late now that he realized he would not have time to change his coat, which was not only worn out with patches upon patches, but also oily, dirty, and smelling of goat. When Nasrettin's friend opened the door to Nasrettin, he was shocked. He was afraid his other guests would laugh at him for being friends with such a shabby, smelly man. He's like, what? Nasrettin simply jumped off his donkey, hugged his friend, and joined the banquet. He was so happy to be among friends that, for a while he didn't notice something very strange. No one was facing him. Yeah, they were all over here, and Nasrettin was over here. All of the guests turned their backs toward him, and when the servants brought dinner into the room, the food was served to everyone but him. Okay. Well, before long, Nasrettin was left sitting alone with nothing to eat. And several times he tried to start a conversation by yelling to a guest at the opposite side of the room, but no one listened, and no one responded. You can see he's over here, and they're just all over here. Nasrettin looked thoughtfully at his friends. Each man was scrubbed until he glistened. Each one was wearing his best coat. Then Nasrettin looked down at his own coat, and it was patches upon patches and oily and dirty and smelly. It smelled like goat. Very quietly, he slipped out the door. He mounted his little donkey and began trotting home, when he had an idea. got home, Nazaretan jumped into a tub of hot water. He poured a whole jar of perfumed soap crystals and scrubbed himself until he glistened and the whole room was filled with bubbles. It looks like he had put his donkey in there too. I never noticed that. I've read this a million times too. Well, Nazaretan dried and powdered himself, and then he put on new shoes with tasseled toes. See the toes? New shoes, fabulous. And a magnificent new turban with sparkling jewels, a fine new coat of shining silk with golden threads. He was styling. So Nazaretan strutted out of his house, and everyone nodded respectfully as he swaggered across the street, heading back to his rich friend's house. Oh, the servant ushered Nazaretan into the banquet hall, and his smiling host immediately gave him food and drink, and everyone smiled and nodded at Nazaretan. What a fine figure he made. What a fine coat. Nazaretan was the most popular man at the banquet. All he had to do was change his coat, right? So, Nazaretan picked up the choicest lamb chop, and he opened his coat, and he put it inside and said, "Eat, coat, eat." And then Nazaretan picked up fish fried in vine leaves and roasted eggplant, and he opened his coat, and he put them inside the coat and said, "Eat, coat, eat." Nazaretan scooped up pilaf, raisins, pistachio nuts. Every time he opened that coat, he put food in and said, "Eat, coat, eat." Boiled squash stuffed with hash. Olives went into the coat. Eat, eat. Slices of chicken breast stewed in rose water, sugar cakes, flavored jelly, sherbet, sticky baklava, pomegranates, oranges, apples, figs, dates. All of this food Nazaretan stuffed into his bulging coat, shouting, "Go ahead, eat, coat, eat." The guests were amazed. What was Nazaretan doing? At last the alarmed host said, "Tell me, old friend, why are you feeding your coat?" "Well, surely you wanted my coat to eat," Nazaretan replied. "When I first arrived in my old coat, made of patches upon patches, there wasn't any food for me, and yet when I came back in the new coat, there was every kind of food for me. This shows that it was the coat, not me, that you invited to your banquet." Think about it. "Remember this, friends," Nazaretan Hoka said. "If you want to look deeply, look at the man and not his coat. You can change that coat, but you cannot change the man. A coat may be fine, but a coat doesn't make a man. Outside, a man may wear sheepskin, but inside, he may wear the heart of a wolf. Many a good man may be found under a shabby coat. With coats, new are the best, but with friends, old are the best." Everyone cheered. "The wisdom of Nazaretan Hoka calls for a celebration," said the host. Music and fireworks resounded, and everyone danced under the stars of heaven. And the little moral here, they say, is, he who wears heaven in his heart is always well dressed. It's one of those don't judge a book by its cover kind of deals, huh? Isn't that a good story? It's a good one. The Hungry Coat by Demi. Yeah. Thank you, my friends. Would you please do me one more favor? Well, one 3-part favor. Kiss your beautiful brain. Kiss your loving heart. And this kind of goes along with our, the way you are inside makes you beautiful on the outside. And whatever you are on the outside is beautiful as well. So look in that mirror and say, "Hey, good looking." Because you're all good looking. Don't need to change anything. Just the way you are. See ya.